Jai Mahamaya ki jai, Vishveshwari Mata ki jai. We will go on with chapter 10 from book 11 of Srimad Devi Bhagavatam. Narayana said, O Nara of Brahma, O Narada, the ashes prepared from ordinary fires are secondary. The greatness of the secondary ashes is to be considered by no means trifling. This also destroys the darkness of ignorance and reveals the higher knowledge. It is of various kinds. Amongst the secondary ashes that prepared from Viradyagni is the best. It is equivalent to that obtained from the Agnihotra Yagya, and it is as glorious. The ashes obtained from the marriage sacrificial fire that obtained from the burning of the samadhi fuel, what is obtained from the configuration of fire are known as the secondary ashes. The Brahmanas, Ksatras, Vaishyas should use the ashes from the Agnihotri and the Viraja fire. For the householders, the ashes from the marriage sacrifice are good too. For the brahmacharis, the ashes from the samadhi fuels are good, and for the sudras, the fire, the cooking place of the Vedas, knowing Brahmins is good. For the other persons, the ashes obtained from the conflagration of fires are good. Now I will talk of the origin of the ashes obtained from the Viraja fire. The chief season of the Viraja fire sacrifice is the full moon night with Chitri asterism, with the moon. If this does not take place, the sacrifice may be performed at other seasons, and it should be remembered that the fit place is where one adopts as one's dwelling place. The auspicious field, garden, or forest is also commendable for the above sacrifice. On the Trayodasi Tirtha, the 13th night preceding the full moon night, one is to complete one's bathing and sandhyas. Then one is to worship one's guru and bow down before him. Then, receiving his permission, the sacrificer is to put on pure clothing and perform the special puja. Then, with his white sacrificial thread, white garlands, and white sandal paste, one is to sit on the kusa seat with sacrificial kusa grass in one's hands. With his face towards the east or north, he has to perform the pranayam thrice. Then he has to meditate on Shiva and Bhagavati and get mentally their permission. O Deva Bhagavan, O Mother Bhagavati, I will perform this vow for my lifetime, thus making the resolve he should start with this sacrifice. But this is to be known that this vrata can be performed for 12 years, for 6 years, for 3 years, for 1 year, for 6 months, for 12 days, for 6 days, for 3 days, even at least for 1 day. But in every case, he must take mentally the permission of the Deva and the Devi. Now, to perform the Viraji Homa, one is to light the fire according to one's sutras, and then perform homa with ghee, fuel, or with karu, an oblation of rice, milk, and sugar, all boiled together. Then on the 14th lunar day, one is to pray, let the tattvas, principles in me, be purified, and then perform the homa ceremony with samadhi, etc., as above mentioned. Thus uttering the 5 elements and the 5 organs of actions and the 5 organs of perception and the 5 pranas, the 7 dhatus, mind, buddhi, intellect, ahankara, sattva, raja, tama gunas, prakriti, purusha, raga, vidya, kala, deva, and kal, Mahasuda Vidya, Sadashiva, Shakti Siva Tattva, etc., respectively by its own name, one is to offer oblations to the fire by the 5-lettered Viraja mantra. Then the sacrificer will become pure. Then from a round ball of fresh cow dung, and purifying it with mantram, place it on the fire and carefully watch it. On that day, the devotee is to take a sacred food of boiled rice with ghee. On the morning of Chaturdasi, he is to perform his daily duties as above, and then to perform a homa on that fire, uttering the 5-lettered mantra. He is not to take any other food the rest of the time. On the next day, that is, on the full moon day, after performing the morning duties, he is to do the homa ceremony, uttering the 5-letter mantra, and then take leave of the fire. He is then to raise up the ashes. Then the devotee is to keep jata, matted hair, or to shave clean his head, or to keep only one lock on the crown of his head. He is to take his bath, then, and if he can, then he should be naked or put on a red-colored cloth or one piece of bark. He is to take a staff and a belt. Washing his hands and feet and sipping twice by his 2 hands, he is by his 2 hands is to pulverize the ashes and uttering the 6 mantras, fire, ashes, and so forth. Apply ashes from his head to his foot. Then, as before, he is to apply ashes gradually to his arms and all over his body, uttering the pranava of Shiva, bum, bum. He is to put on the Triya Usa Tripundra on his forehead. After this is done, the jiva, the embodied self, becomes Shiva, the 5 self, and he should believe himself to be like Shiva. O Narada, thus at this 3 sanyas periods, he is to do this Pasupata Vratra, is the source of enjoyment as well as liberation, and as well of the cessation of all brutal desires. By the performance of this vratra, the devotee is to free himself gradually of his animal feelings and then to worship Bhagavan Sadashiva in the form of a phallic symbol. The above bath ashes is highly meritorious, and it is the source of happiness. By holding the ashes, one's longevity is prolonged. One gets even great bodily strength, becomes healthy, and his beauty increases, and he gets nourishment. Thus using the ashes is for the preservation of one's own self. It is the source of one's good and of all sorts of happiness and prosperity. Those who use the ashes, bhasma, are free from the dangers of plague and other epidemic diseases. This bhasma is the 3 sorts as it leads to the attainment of peace, nourishment, or to the fulfillment of all desires. Here ends the 10th chapter of the 11th book on the subject of Gona Bhasma, secondary ashes, in the Mahapuranam Srimad Devi Bhagavatam of 18,000 verses by Maharishi Veda Vyasa. Jai Mahamaya ki jai, Vishveshwari Mata ki jai, Bole Baba ki jai.